What kind of person claims a stranger's home as their own, invites 100 people to a party, and then calls the police when the rightful owner shows up? That's the question I asked myself as I stood on the gravel path leading to my family's cabin, staring at a scene that felt ripped from a fever dream. Balloons bobbed in the breeze tied to my porch railing. A catering van idled in my driveway, its driver unloading trays of glistening appetizers. Strangers milled about my front yard, laughing, clinking glasses, and snapping selfies against the backdrop of my cedar walls. At the center of it all was Karen, a woman I'd never met, striding toward me with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her blonde hair was pulled tight in a bun, her voice sharp as she waved me off like I was the intruder. "This venue's reserved," she snapped, barely glancing up. "You need to leave." My heart pounded as I clutched the deed to my grandfather's cabin, the one place that held every memory of my childhood summers. How had this happened? How had my sanctuary been hijacked? I'd driven up to Willow Creek that morning, expecting solitude. The cabin, nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, was my escape from the city's grind. A place where the air smelled of pine and the only sounds were the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a hawk. My grandfather built it with his own hands, and after he passed last year, it became mine. I hadn't been back since the funeral, but I needed to clear my head, to feel the quiet he'd loved. Instead I found chaos. A banner stretched across the porch read, "Karen's Annual Gala. Welcome VIPs." A DJ was setting up speakers near the fire pit where I used to roast marshmallows. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a takeover. I stepped forward, my boots crunching on the gravel, and called out, "Excuse me, this is my property." The crowd hushed, heads turning. Karen froze, her eyes narrowing. "Your property?" she scoffed, as if I'd told a bad joke. "I booked this place months ago. Check your facts." Her confidence was unnerving. I'm not confrontational by nature. My friends call me the peacemaker, but something about her tone lit a spark in me. I held up the deed, my hands trembling slightly. "This is my cabin. My grandfather left it to me. I don't know who you think you booked this with, but you're trespassing." Karen's smile didn't falter, but her eyes turned cold. She stepped closer, her voice low and venomous. "Listen, honey, I've got 100 guests arriving tonight. I've paid deposits. I've got permits. You're not ruining my event." Permits? Deposits? My mind raced. Had someone scammed her? Was there a mix-up with the rental agency? I tried to stay calm. "Let's sort this out. Show me your paperwork." She thrust her clipboard at me, revealing a single sheet with a logo I didn't recognize and the words, "Willow Creek Venue Rental Agreement." The address listed was mine, but the signature at the bottom wasn't. It was a forgery. Before I could process this, a man in a park ranger uniform approached, his brow furrowed. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" he asked, glancing between us. Karen seized the moment, her voice rising to a theatrical pitch. "This woman's trying to sabotage my gala. She's claiming my venue." The crowd murmured, their eyes on me like I was the villain. My chest tightened. I wasn't just fighting for my cabin, I was fighting to be believed. The ranger looked at my deed, then at Karen's paper. His frown deepened. "This is unusual," he said, scratching his head. "I'll need to call this in." Karen's face flushed red. "Call it in? Call 911. She's trespassing." My jaw dropped. She was turning this on me? I stood my ground, the deed crinkling in my grip. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The ranger hesitated, his radio crackling as he stepped away to make the call. Karen glared at me, her eyes daring me to push further. The air grew thick with tension as more guests arrived, their cars lining my quiet dirt road. A woman in a glittering dress whispered to her friend, pointing at me. A man with a camera snapped a photo, probably for some social media post about the drama. I felt exposed, like I was on trial in my own front yard. Karen paced, muttering about lawsuits and entitled locals. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I needed to understand how she pulled this off. Had she been scammed, or was she the scammer? I scanned the crowd, searching for clues, when I noticed a familiar face. A neighbor, Mr. Hargrove, who'd known my grandfather for decades. He was standing by the catering van, looking confused. I waved him over, desperate for an ally. Mr. Hargrove, do you know what's going on here? I asked. His eyes widened as he recognized me. Ellie? What in the world? I thought you sold the cabin. My heart sank. Sold it? Who had spread that lie? Before I could ask more, Karen stormed back, her phone pressed to her ear. Yes, 911? I need help immediately. There's a trespasser ruining my event. My blood ran cold. She was really doing this, calling the police on me on my own land. The ranger returned, his expression grim. Sheriff's on the way, he said. Let's keep this civil until they get here. Civil? I wanted to laugh. Nothing about this was civil. My grandfather's cabin, the place where he taught me to fish, to dream, to be still, was being stolen out from under me. And yet, as I looked at Karen's smug face, I realized this wasn't just about the cabin. It was about truth, about standing up to someone who thought they could bully their way into anything. I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. This was my home. I wasn't backing down. As the sun dipped below the ridge, casting long shadows across the clearing, the crowd grew restless. Karen's guests, dressed in cocktail attire, whispered among themselves, their earlier cheer replaced by unease. I stood by the porch, clutching the deed like a lifeline, while Karen worked the crowd, spinning her narrative. She's trying to ruin everything, she said loudly, gesturing at me. I've planned this gala for months. Her voice carried the weight of someone used to getting her way. Each word a calculated jab. My pulse raced, but I refused to let her theatrics shake me. I needed answers. How had she convinced so many people this cabin was hers to reserve? And why did Mr. Hargrove think I'd sold it? The questions gnawed at me, but I had to stay focused. The sheriff would be here soon, and I needed to prove my case. Mr. Hargrove shuffled closer, his weathered face creased with worry. Ellie, I heard from someone at the county office that your cabin was on the market, he said quietly. They said it was listed online. I didn't think to question it. Your granddad's passing hit us all hard. His words were a gut punch. Listed online? I hadn't listed anything. My grandfather's will was clear. The cabin was mine, no exceptions. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling as I searched for any trace of a listing. Sure enough, a quick Google search revealed a sleek website for Willow Creek Venue Rentals, featuring photos of my cabin, my porch, my windows, even the old oak tree where I used to swing. The listing claimed it was available for events, complete with a booking form and a phone number. My stomach churned. Someone had gone to great lengths to sell a lie. I showed the website to Mr. Hargrove, who shook his head. That's not right, Ellie. Your granddad would never have wanted this. His voice was heavy with guilt, as if he felt responsible for not checking the rumor. I reassured him it wasn't his fault, but my mind was racing. Was Karen a victim of this scam? Or was she behind it? Her confidence, her forged rental agreement, it all pointed to something deliberate. I glanced at her, now posing for photos with guests, her smile as polished as a politician's. She didn't seem like someone who'd been duped. She seemed like someone in control. I needed to dig deeper, but the crowd was growing impatient, and the ranger was watching me like I might bolt. Then came the twist that turned my world upside down. As I scrolled through the fake website, I noticed a small logo in the footer, managed by Pinnacle Properties. My heart stopped. Pinnacle was the real estate company my ex-boyfriend Ryan worked for. We'd broken up a year ago, right after my grandfather's funeral, when he'd pushed me to sell the cabin. It's just sitting there, Ellie, he'd said. You could cash out and start fresh. I'd refused, and he'd walked away, calling me stubborn. Could he be involved? The thought made my skin crawl. Ryan knew every detail about the cabin. Its address, its quirks, even the fact that I hadn't been back in months. Had he fed Karen the information to stage this takeover? Or worse, was he profiting from it? Before I could process this, a sheriff's SUV rolled up, its lights flashing silently. A deputy stepped out, a tall woman with a no-nonsense demeanor. All right, folks, let's sort this out, she said, her eyes scanning the scene. Karen rushed to her, clutching her clipboard like a shield. Officer, thank God you're here. This woman's trespassing on my venue, she cried, pointing at me. The deputy raised a hand, silencing her, and turned to me. You're the owner? I nodded, handing her the deed. She studied it, then Karen's rental agreement, her brow furrowing. "This signature doesn't match the county records," she said, glancing at Karen. "Can you explain that?" Karen's face paled, but she recovered quickly. "I rented this through a legitimate agency. I'm the victim here." Her voice cracked, but I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or calculation. The deputy turned to me. "Do you have any other proof of ownership?" I pulled out my phone, showing her the county's online property records, which listed my name. The crowd was silent now, watching the drama unfold. Karen's guests started whispering, some slipping away to their cars. The ranger, still hovering, chimed in. "I've known Ellie's family for years. That cabin's been there since before I was born." Karen's composure cracked. "This is outrageous," she shouted, her voice shrill. "I'm calling my lawyer." But the deputy wasn't swayed. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. We're going to the station to sort this out." My heart pounded with a mix of relief and dread. This wasn't over, but I was starting to unravel Karen's web. The question was, how deep did it go, and was Ryan's name tangled in it? The sheriff's station was a small fluorescent-lit building that smelled of coffee and old paper. I sat across from Deputy Martinez, her desk cluttered with files and a half-eaten donut. Karen was in another room, her voice muffled but still sharp as she argued with another officer. My deed and phone sat on the desk, evidence of my claim, but my mind was elsewhere, on Ryan, on Pinnacle Properties, on the fake website that had turned my cabin into a battleground. How had Karen gotten so far with this charade? And why did it feel like the truth was slipping through my fingers? Deputy Martinez leaned forward, her eyes steady. "Ellie, walk me through this. When was the last time you checked on the cabin?" I swallowed, guilt creeping in. "Not since last summer. After my grandfather died, it was too hard to come back." She nodded, jotting something down. "And you never listed it for rent or sale?" I shook my head. "Never." She pulled up the fake website on her computer, her brow furrowing as she scrolled. "This is sophisticated," she said. "Professional photos, a booking system, even customer reviews. Someone put real money into this." Her words hit like a stone. This wasn't a casual scam. It was calculated. I mentioned Pinnacle Properties and my suspicion about Ryan. Martinez's eyes narrowed. "You think your ex is involved?" I hesitated, the weight of accusing someone I once loved pressing down on me. "I don't know," I admitted. "But he works for them, and he knew I wasn't using the cabin. He wanted me to sell it." Martinez made another note. "We'll look into Pinnacle. For now, let's focus on Karen. Her story's falling apart, but she's sticking to it." Back at the cabin, the crowd had thinned, but a few stragglers lingered, snapping photos of the scandal. The catering van was gone, the balloons sagging in the evening chill. I felt a pang of loss, not just for the chaos but for the cabin's sanctity. This place was supposed to be my refuge, not a stage for someone else's drama. Martinez drove me back, promising to follow up on the website and Karen's claims. As we pulled up, I saw Mr. Hargrove waiting by the porch, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "Ellie, I called my cousin at the county office," he said. "She checked the records. Someone filed a false deed transfer last month, claiming you sold the cabin to a holding company." My breath caught. A false deed? This was bigger than Karen. Someone had tried to steal my property outright. I thanked Mr. Hargrove and stepped inside the cabin, the familiar creak of the floorboards grounding me. But the air felt wrong, invaded. Karen's decorations still littered the place. Streamers, a guest book, even a stack of her business cards. Picked one up. Karen Wheeler, event planner extraordinaire. It read with a phone number and an email linked to the fake website. My hands shook as I dialed the number, half expecting it to be disconnected. Instead, a familiar voice answered. "Pinnacle Properties, this is Ryan." My heart stopped. It was him. I hung up, my mind reeling. Ryan wasn't just involved, he was at the center of this. But why? Was it greed? Revenge? Or something else entirely? I called Martinez, my voice trembling as I told her about Ryan's voice on the line. She promised to dig into Pinnacle's records and track down the holding company. "Stay put, Ellie," she said. "Don't confront anyone until we know more." But staying put felt impossible. I paced the cabin, memories of my grandfather flooding back. his rough hands teaching me to tie a fishing knot, his laugh echoing by the fire. This place was his legacy, and someone was trying to erase it. I couldn't just wait. I grabbed my laptop and started searching for anything linking Ryan to Karen. Social media was a dead end. Karen's profiles were polished, all event photos and fake smiles, while Ryan's were private. But then I found it. A cached version of the fake website's about page, listing Karen as the venue coordinator and Pinnacle as the parent company. The pieces were falling into place, but the puzzle was far from complete. As night fell, I heard a car pull up. My heart raced, expecting Martinez or even Ryan. Instead, it was Karen alone, her face pale in the porch light. She knocked, her voice low. "Ellie, we need to talk." My instinct screamed to slam the door, but something in her eyes, desperation maybe, made me pause. Was she here to confess or to double down? I opened the door, my hand on my phone, ready to call Martinez. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold. Karen stepped inside, her hands raised like a surrender. "I didn't know," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I was renting a legitimate venue. I swear." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment I almost believed her. But then I remembered her forged agreement, her call to 911, her unshakable confidence. Was this another act, or was she a pawn in a bigger game? Karen stood in my cabin, her eyes darting around as if expecting an ambush. The dim light from the old lamp cast shadows across her face, making her look smaller, less certain than the woman who'd screamed for 911 hours earlier. "I didn't know it was your cabin," she repeated, her voice softer now, almost pleading. "I was hired to organize the gala. The listing was legit, or so I thought." Her words felt rehearsed, but there was a tremor in them that gave me pause. Was she telling the truth? Or was this another layer of deception? My mind flashed to Ryan's voice on the phone, the fake website, the forged deed. If Karen was a victim, she was a convenient one. I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. "Who hired you?" I asked, my tone sharp. She hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of her sweater. "A company. Pinnacle Properties. They said they owned the cabin." My blood ran cold. There it was, confirmation that Ryan's company was at the heart of this. But Karen's story didn't add up. If she was just a hired planner, why the forged rental agreement? Why the call to the police? I pressed her, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "You had a contract with my address and a fake signature. You called me a trespasser on my own land. That doesn't sound like someone who didn't know." Karen's eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she might bolt. Instead, she sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. "I panicked," she whispered. "I've been planning this gala for months. It's my biggest event. If it failed, my business was done." Her vulnerability caught me off guard, but I wasn't ready to trust her. Not yet. I pulled out my phone and showed her the website, the one with her name listed as venue coordinator. Her face paled. "That's not my site," she said, her voice barely audible. "They sent me the link to share with clients, but I didn't build it." I wanted to believe her, but the pieces still didn't fit. If she was telling the truth, someone at Pinnacle had used her as a front, feeding her just enough to keep her complicit. If she was lying, she was a better actress than I'd given her credit for. "Who at Pinnacle contacted you?" I asked. She swallowed hard, her eyes flicking to the door. "A guy named Ryan Carter. He said he was the property manager." My heart sank. Ryan, my ex, the man who'd once promised to build a life with me, now tearing down the one thing I had left of my grandfather. Before I could respond, headlights swept across the windows. Deputy Martinez's SUV pulled up, and she stepped out, her face grim. "Ellie, we've got something," she said, motioning me outside. Karen followed, her steps hesitant. Martinez held up a printout from the county records. The false deed transfer was filed by a shell company linked to Pinnacle Properties. "We're tracing the owner now, but it's looking like fraud." She glanced at Karen. "Ms. Wheeler, you're coming with us for more questions." Karen's face crumpled, but she nodded, her earlier defiance gone. As Martinez led her to the SUV, I felt a strange mix of vindication and unease. Karen might be a pawn, but Ryan was the kingpin, and I needed to confront him. I drove to the city the next morning, my hands gripping the wheel as I rehearsed what I'd say. Pinnacle's office was a sleek glass building, all sharp angles and polished surfaces, a far cry from the rustic warmth of my cabin. Ryan was at his desk, his face lighting up with surprise when he saw me. "Ellie? What are you doing here?" His charm was as disarming as ever, but I saw through it now. "You tried to steal my cabin," I said, my voice low but firm. His smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. "Whoa, steal? That's a big accusation. I don't know what you're talking about." His denial was smooth, but his eyes betrayed him, a flicker of panic just like Karen's. I laid out the evidence. The website, the forged deed, Karen's story. His face hardened with each word, but he didn't interrupt. When I finished, he leaned back, his voice cold. "You can't prove anything, Ellie. Be careful what you say." His words were a challenge, but I wasn't backing down. I left his office, my resolve stronger than ever. Martinez called as I drove back, her voice tense. "We've got a warrant to search Pinnacle's records. Ryan's name is all over the shell company. He's in deep." Relief washed over me, but it was bittersweet. Ryan had been part of my life, part of my memories. Now he was the architect of my pain. Back at the cabin, I sat on the porch, the stars bright above. The fight wasn't over, but I was ready. For my grandfather, for the truth, I'd see this through. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, emails, and meetings with Deputy Martinez. Pinnacle Properties was unraveling, and Ryan was at the center of the storm. The sheriff's office had seized their records, revealing a web of shell companies and fraudulent listings. Not just my cabin, but other properties across the county. Karen, it turned out, was a small player hired to lend legitimacy to the scam. She'd been fed lies about the cabin's ownership, her ambition and desperation making her an easy mark. She cooperated fully, handing over emails and contracts that pointed straight to Ryan. But knowing the truth didn't erase the violation I felt. My cabin, my grandfather's legacy, had been reduced to a line item in a con. Every creak of the floorboards, every scratch on the walls, felt like a wound now. I couldn't stay still. I spent hours cleaning the cabin, scrubbing away the remnants of Karen's gala. Streamers, spilled wine, a forgotten high heel under the couch. Each task was a reclaiming, a way to restore what was mine. But the questions kept coming. Why had Ryan targeted me? Was it just about money? Or was there something personal in his betrayal? We'd ended on bad terms, but I never imagined he'd stoop this low. Late one night, as I sifted through old photos of my grandfather, I found a letter tucked in an album. It was his handwriting addressed to me. "Ellie, this cabin is more than wood and nails. It's your roots. Hold fast." Tears stung my eyes. He'd known I'd need strength, even if he couldn't have predicted this fight. Martinez called with an update. Ryan had been arrested. The evidence was overwhelming: bank transfers, forged documents, even emails where he bragged about flipping properties that weren't his. But the victory felt hollow. I wanted to face him, to ask why. Against Martinez's advice, I went to the station during his bail hearing. He sat in a gray suit, his charm replaced by a tired slump. When our eyes met, he looked away, shame flickering across his face. "Why my cabin?" I asked, my voice echoing in the quiet courtroom. He didn't answer, but his silence said enough. It wasn't just greed, it was spite. I'd refused to sell, to bend to his vision of my future, and he'd tried to take it by force. Back at the cabin, the weight of it all hit me. I sat by the fire pit, the same one where Karen's DJ had set up, and let myself cry. Not just for the cabin, but for the trust I'd lost in Ryan, in the world's fairness. The stars above were bright, just as they'd been when I was a kid, listening to my grandfather's stories. I wondered what he'd say now. Probably something simple like, "Keep going." And I would. I had to. The cabin wasn't just a place. It was a promise, to him, to myself. I'd fight to keep it, no matter what came next. Karen reached out a week later, her voice shaky over the phone. "I'm sorry, Ellie," she said. "I didn't know the full story. I was in over my head." I believed her, not because I trusted her, but because I'd seen the fear in her eyes that night at the cabin. She'd been used just like me. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. She paused, then said, "Start over. Make things right." Her words stuck with me. Starting over wasn't just about her business or my cabin. It was about rebuilding trust in ourselves and others. I hung up, feeling a strange sense of closure. Karen wasn't my enemy anymore. She was just another person caught in Ryan's mess. The legal battle wasn't over, but the cabin was mine again, at least on paper. I walked the property, touching the rough cedar walls, the weathered porch railing. Each step felt like a reclaiming, a stitching together of what had been torn apart. But the scars remained. I couldn't unsee the balloons, the strangers, the forged papers. I couldn't unhear Ryan's voice on that call. The cabin was still my sanctuary, but it was different now, stronger, maybe because I'd fought for it. As I stood by the oak tree, the one from my childhood swings, I made a decision. I wouldn't let this break me. I'd rebuild not just the cabin but my sense of home. Spring came to Willow Creek, and with it a quiet resolve. The cabin stood as it always had, its cedar walls weathered but sturdy, a testament to my grandfather's hands and heart. I'd spent the winter making it mine again. Repainting the porch, planting wildflowers along the path, even hanging a new swing from the oak tree. Each task was a step toward healing, a way to overwrite the chaos of Karen's gala and Ryan's betrayal. But the work wasn't just physical. I'd been wrestling with bigger questions. How do you rebuild trust when it's been shattered? How do you hold on to a place when its memories are tangled with pain? I didn't have all the answers, but I was learning to live with the questions. The community rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. Mr. Hargrove stopped by with homemade jam, his way of apologizing for believing the sale rumor. Other neighbors brought stories of my grandfather, reminding me of the legacy I was protecting. Even Deputy Martinez checked in, her brisk demeanor softening as she shared updates on the case. Ryan had pleaded guilty to fraud, sparing me a trial but leaving me with a hollow ache. His motives were clearer now. Greed, yes, but also a need to control, to punish me for choosing the cabin over his plans. Knowing this didn't erase the hurt, but it gave me clarity. I wasn't the one who'd failed. He was. One morning as I swept the porch, a car pulled up. It was Karen, looking different, her hair loose, her face free of makeup. She held a small box, her hands nervous. "I wanted to give you this," she said, handing it to me. Inside was a photo frame, empty but carved with wildflowers like the ones I'd planted. "It's for your cabin," she said. A fresh start. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to reject it, to hold on to my anger, but another part saw her gesture for what it was. An attempt to make amends. "Thank you," I said, my voice quiet but genuine. She nodded, her eyes meeting mine for a moment before she left. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step. I started hosting small gatherings at the cabin. Not galas but quiet evenings with neighbors, sharing stories and laughter by the fire pit. Each one felt like a reclamation, a way to fill the space with new memories. One night, as the fire crackled and the stars shone, Mr. Hargrove raised a glass. "To Ellie," he said, "and to this cabin for standing strong." The others cheered, and I felt a warmth I hadn't in months. The cabin wasn't just mine. It belonged to this community, to the people who'd known my grandfather, who'd seen me grow. It was bigger than me, bigger than Ryan's schemes or Karen's mistakes. But the fight wasn't over. Pinnacle Properties was under investigation, and other victims were coming forward. Families whose homes had been targeted, their deeds forged, their trust broken. I joined a local group advocating for stronger property laws, sharing my story to help others. It was exhausting, but it gave me purpose. I wasn't just fighting for my cabin anymore. I was fighting for anyone who'd ever had their home threatened. The work was slow, but each step felt like a victory, a way to honor my grandfather's legacy. As summer approached, I sat on the porch, the new swing creaking beside me. The wildflowers were blooming, their colors bright against the green. I thought of my grandfather's letter, his words about holding fast. I'd done that and more. I'd faced Karen's chaos, Ryan's betrayal, and my own doubts, and I'd come out stronger. The cabin was still my sanctuary, but it was also a symbol of resilience, of community, of the fight for what matters. I wasn't naive anymore. I knew the world could be cruel, but I also knew I could stand up to it. And that was enough. By fall, the cabin felt alive again. The wildflowers had spread, dotting the clearing with bursts of color. The porch was freshly painted, the swing a favorite spot for reading or watching the sunset. I'd started a small garden, too, planting herbs my grandfather loved, rosemary, thyme, sage. Each sprig was a nod to him, a way to keep his spirit close. But the cabin wasn't just a shrine to the past. It was my future, too. I decided to spend more time here, maybe even make it my permanent home. The city had lost its pull, its noise a poor substitute for the quiet of Willow Creek. Here I could breathe. Here I could be me. The legal battles were winding down. Pinnacle Properties had collapsed under the weight of lawsuits and bad press, its assets frozen. Ryan faced years in prison, his charm no match for the evidence stacked against him. I didn't attend his sentencing. I didn't need to. His betrayal had cut deep, but I'd found my own closure. Karen, too, had faded from the spotlight. She'd sent me a letter, detailing her plans to rebuild her business with honesty this time. I didn't reply, but I kept the letter, tucked away with my grandfather's. It was a reminder that people could change even if trust took time. The community group I joined was making waves. We'd pushed for new laws to protect homeowners from deed fraud, and the county was listening. At a town hall, I shared my story, my voice steady as I described the night Karen claimed my cabin. The room was silent, then erupted in applause. Strangers thanked me, their own stories of loss and resilience spilling out. I realized then that this fight had given me more than my cabin back. It had given me a purpose. I wasn't just Ellie, the girl who'd lost her grandfather. I was Ellie, the woman who'd stood her ground, who'd turned pain into action. One evening as I sat by the fire pit, Mr. Hargrove stopped by with a gift. A small wooden sign, carved with my grandfather's name and the words "Legacy Lives." We hung it by the porch, a quiet tribute. As we sat, sharing stories of the past, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The cabin wasn't just a place, it was a story, of love, loss, and the courage to keep going. Karen's gala, Ryan's betrayal, they were chapters, not the whole book. I'd write the rest myself. I looked out at the mountains, their peaks softened by dusk. The hawk I'd heard that first chaotic day circled above, its cry sharp and free. I smiled, my grandfather's words echoing in my mind. Hold fast. I had, and I would. The cabin was mine, not just in deed but in spirit. It was a place to heal, to grow, to fight for what mattered. And as I sat there, the fire warm against the autumn chill, I knew I was home.